Have you. If you're interested in being part of our App Talking Remote community and Remote AF community, go to remoteaf.co, click the community button and join us there. We've got a fantastic community of people talking about all things remote and many things that aren't remote. So it's a great community. Please join us. Today we've got a fantastic guest who's going to sit with us for the next 45 odd minutes. It's the wonderful Farnaz Vahab. How are you today?
Hi, Tony. I'm very well, thank you.
Brilliant. Look, for those that don't know you, please do a bit of an intro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farnaz. I am an organization system coach, and I'm one of the co-designers of RAP Remote Agility Framework.
She is indeed, and she's also a guide. So we call it a Remote AF Guide. One of the wonderful things that we're having you on today is because we wanted to do in this series, we're doing a series with our guides, is how you use Remote AF in the real world. And a lot of people ask us about that regularly as well. How does this thing get used? Do people really use it? And the answer is yes, lots of people are using it. So none better than the person I've just brought here today to talk about that. So I think the first thing is just starting to talk about what's the tool that you tend to use most out of the Remote AF toolkit, Farnaz?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with all the patterns and launch practices that we have in Remote Agility Framework, but one of my favorite and the most used one is the operating model design.
So operating model design is a fairly big tool.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you actually use that to start with and what you actually use it for.
Yes, a good question. Yeah, as you said, the name is quite generic, and if you haven't used the tool before, you might not know what exactly I'm referring to. So, operating model design and series of its canvases mainly is designed to help the organization or teams or any system of work to look at the teaming model and the way that they work and have the opportunity and provide a space to co-design their operating model with the people who are involved and part of that system. So it has a very thorough process to understand the system of work, look at it from different perspectives, look at different elements in that system of work. I can explain further what they are, but the main purpose over here, use the wisdom and knowledge you have in the system to design the new operating model to work better, be more efficient and effective, and understand the teaming model, how those teams interact and work together, design it together and implement it and set them for a better outcome. I use that tool a lot, but not necessarily for co-design and not necessarily for designing a new operating model.
That's interesting. So talk to me a little bit about that, because that's a very interesting. And the thing about Remote AF patterns is that we designed them to be modular, and we knew that they wouldn't just get used for the things that we designed them for. And so one of the things with this series is hearing about what you're actually using them for.
Exactly. Yeah, I use it more as a diagnostic tool. So wherever I go, any system of work that I work, I use that tool as a diagnostic tool in a way that whenever you work with a system of work, regardless of any size it has, you work with a team, you work with a program of work, you are dealing with portfolios, and even if you are dealing with a group of leadership team and working with them, the most important part, and even if you are a coach, because I have a coaching background as well, you need to understand them first. You understand their system of work, from which location they work, which system they work, what are if they are into technology, what platform they use, what are the constraints that they have in their system of work, how the work come to their land, and how work flows. So you need to bring different angles to the conversation to understand this system of work, what elements contribute in success or the problems that they have. And even if you kind of look at it, I don't know, old-fashioned business analyst, you need to understand the as is process. If I use that language, you need to understand as is process. So in the beginning of the op model canvas, there is a section that provides that different perspective. So regardless of how experienced you are, it provides the guideline. These are the areas that you need to look at. These are the areas you need to have a conversation and investigate in your system of work. So I use that part to kind of know what I am dealing and where that system of work at the moment is, baseline it. That's the language you usually use. Baseline it, and then think about, okay, if we want to improve that system of work for something better, what we can do. So depending on the problem that I have, sometimes I use some principles that as a like an experience plan, so I have some principles to use in order to help them. And sometimes you work with an organization, they already have some principles in place that you can kind of adopt and build on top of that. And using those principles in RAF, we use them as a design principles plus RAF design principles itself. You kind of combine them, and you will have some guideline in order to know, if I want to improve that system of work, where I should go, which direction we should choose, and use those principles for designing a better system of work. You use those principles to evolving that system of work, improving to what they want to be.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I just want to pick up on it because we talk a lot about dynamically adaptive organisations.
Yeah.
And the dynamic teaming piece of it that you're talking about there is really important. So using it both as diagnostic and dialogic, right?
Yeah.
As well, right? Which is really, really important. And what I'm interested in, that you're actually using it in a sense of thinking about what the organisation wants, where the organisation wants to go, rather than just marching with the tool and saying, we're going to do this and you're going to go this way. How's that received when you work?
I think usually people they like it because that's a little bit different from their previous experiences. The previous experience usually is that, okay, that's a playbook, that's a framework, that's how we believe should work based on the individual experiences. People have worked on different environments that say, okay, it worked for me in this place, in this organization, for this group of people. I love it. I'm going to take it to wherever I go and reuse it. But what I like about this tool is that, yes, you can take the element of your personal experience with that, but it's very important to know the organization or the group that you're working, what are the rules and guidelines they have in place. And when you have that conversation with the group and you get curious to know what they have, what they would like to keep or what they would like to change, it's very receptive because they know it is going to be designed for them, for their needs, for the problems they have. And every organization believes that their problems is unique. And you kind of show that kind of curiosity that we want to solve it in a way for your needs and help you in that way.
That's good. The one thing I just want to touch on with it and pick you up on there a little bit, before we get off just that one pattern, and we were chatting a little bit about it earlier on, is that it's both useful in the transitional, or if you want to scale. So it scales. If you're just looking at transitioning the flow of the teaming, but if you're looking to go at scaling it as well, and you're looking at that transitional or that transformational piece, there's a difference.
And I think that's one of the advantage of this is that you can use it and adopt it at the different levels. So you can use it for solving problems, maybe in one or two squads, one or two teams. You believe the way they have been structured and set up is not working for them. So it helps you to restructure, reteam them, use different archetype, teaming archetype that RAF provides as a guideline to know how you can redefine them better, or you can take it to the next level. You have a portfolio of work. You want to know how that portfolio should work, how the different teaming models should be organized in order to have an end-to-end flow. It can help you in that way. And I have seen it in some areas and some organizations. They have used it as a transformation tool. They want to completely change their ways of working, the way they have been formed. And these two can be used. Yes, the complexity might be different, the length of the activity might be different, but there are many elements, and those modularity can be adopted, and there would be no change in that level.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I like what you call it, your toolkit. And I think that's because they're not just canvases, right? They're patterns, and it's a toolkit of patterns that you can actually use.
Yeah, I might be a little bit biased, but I love RAF. But for me, it's a thinking engine that you have it in your pocket. It helps you think a bit differently and provide those elements of different perspective, to help you to think a bit differently, look at different elements when you kind of baseline your system of work.
That's right. We're happy for you to be biased as a remote.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing then, just spanning out from that, you use the org design, and that's great, the op model. And then you start to think about, okay, well, we've got that piece of the puzzle. Now, how does that flow to using the other patterns? And I think the first one you were talking to me about really is team launching. So you've sort of decided on how you're going to dynamically do these teams and etc. And then you start to look at that. Talk to me about that team.
Yeah. So especially when it comes to when the organization or system of work, they want to think about co-designing or designing their ways of working or their teaming model. Yes, it is good to kind of help with them with the new design, but what is important about the RAF and those series of canvases that are connected, they continue the journey. So you design the system of work, you come up with the right cadences and right ways of working based on what that system of work believes the right thing. But now it's a matter of implementing and setting them for success. So I use the team launches for setting up the teams and helping them to design their ways of working inside the team for a smaller system of work. We also have team launches that after you're setting up those teams, you can use it as a container to bring the group together. And it's a kind of like an end-to-end process. So lots of those design principles that I mentioned in the beginning, for example, when you work with the leadership team to understand what are those values, what are those design principles, will be inherited towards this journey, and it will be passed. So for example, if you believe cross-functional teams is one of the main values and main components of that organization needs to be respected, it will be carried over. I just took it as an example, or different organizations, they have different guidelines, but that you kind of see that kind of connectivity. You design the whole system, then it helps you to implement it and support it for teams and team levels, and also especially the leadership level as well. So we have used the leadership canvases for bringing the leadership group in the new model as well. And it's a change process. We all have had and experience how people respond to the change. So when you kind of introduce something new, even a small, you need to help them with the transition. And with the help of those canvases, you set up a safe environment, a protected environment for the group to be able to innovate, to enable to share their thinking, but it's still stable enough to move forward towards the goals they have been set up.
That's great. I've got a couple of questions, so I'll just pause there and grab these questions while we're talking about the team launch. So the first question around the team launch, which I think is really interesting, I probably would have got around to asking that eventually, but essentially the LinkedIn user wants to know, is it only for setting up new teams?
Good question.
You've just done this research.
Yeah.
Are you setting up new teams, or are you taking teams and optimizing them, or etc.?
No, not necessarily. You might have teams that have been working together for a long time. You need use those team launches for reset them, or even to review, to know which areas they need improvement. And those canvases are not static. That's another thing that I like about them. I have seen teams that they have successfully adopted them. They review, for example, after 3 months or every 2 months, when someone new joins to the group, they use those canvases to bring everyone on the same page. When they go through big changes, they review the canvases. They are quite very dynamic and adaptive as well. So depending on your needs, you can use it on the different scenarios, but they are not necessarily for setting up a team. It's more for bringing alignment and different level.
Okay, so and then the other question sort of dovetails into what you're talking about before. They're asking that, do you use it as a diagnostic as well as a setter upper tool, right? So in other words, do you do that, and do you do that, or is it just for launching the teams?
No, you can use it for both. And same way that I said, I use the up model design as a diagnostic tool, you can use it you can use team launch as a diagnostic tool. I have seen consultants that, for example, when you go to the organization, you're new, you have been asked to help and support the group. You might not necessarily show the canvas to the group, but you can use the canvas to know, okay, these are the areas I need to look at. These are the things needs to be analyzed to be understood where at what level they are. So that's like you can find different application of that. Sometimes you co-design and do it with the group, you just use it as an individual, or even, I don't know, you can use it as a reporting tool to kind of show the stakeholders who brought you on board and say, that's what we have seen from your group, and this is where they are according to this criteria. So yeah, it's quite flexible.
That's good. And did you hear the new term I came up with? Setter upper tool. Yeah. Well, we might use that from now. It's a setter up launch test. Anyway, one of the other questions around that is if you're doing that kind of thing and you're launching it, is it a living canvas? And so that was the question, is that a living canvas?
Yeah, that's come back to my comment that, yeah, the teams that have successfully adopted it, it's not a one-off, it's not a static, it's not just say, we do it now and we forget about it. Especially there are some elements in the team launch canvas, like setting up the working agreement. They are livable, and you need to review it to get the full potential and value of those canvases as well. And I have seen teams, I remember a team that they have been using for almost 1.5 years, and the person who usually, like a Scrum Master deliveries, you usually have one person that owns the canvas and bring everyone together. They have seen the better value when they have the conversation around the canvas. For example, they have a retrospective, they come back to the canvas and use some elements of the canvas in their retro, in their showcase, in their refinement sessions. So depending on how much you want to keep the information live in that canvas, you can reuse it and readopt it over time.
Yeah, and I think if you're listening, you would be aware of, or if you're not, you should be aware of, dynamic reteaming, the Heidi Heflin book. But this dovetails into that thought of that as well, because teams are going to change. The organizational construct is going to change because we have that external or extrinsic VUCA, and then that creates intrinsic internal VUCA that basically we have to deal with, right? And so that's going to put pressure on changing the team. So if you're going to do that in a very formulated way, in a way that allows you to understand where you were, how you were, and what you're going to do. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I agree, and I like the way that it doesn't necessarily dictate one way to run the canvases. I have seen many other guides. I have the privilege to work with many of them, and it is interesting when we talk about how we run it. Each of us run it differently. Some of us would like to start with the middle, some would like from the right part, left part, and even for each patterns and practices that we have in place, you can add your own flavor on top of that and use it. And that's one of the things I like about RAF, is that depending the person who runs, you also might get a little bit different experience. They have a level of standard, but you as a consultant, contractor, person passionate about it, you can add your own flavor to it and run it in your own way as well.
Our illustrious CEO, John, my captain, he'll love it. I just said that. He has a favorite saying that is, as we design these patterns, and we're about to release the new version of the framework very shortly, version 2.0. But no pattern survives first contact with a guide, and we're happy for that, because that's the reasoning around it, is that you're able to actually take it and put your flavor against it and use it in a way that works for you and the organizational context that you're working in.
And bring it back to the community. I think many of us would like to, whatever we learn, share it back to the group for the new generation, for people who would like to try something new as well. So it has that kind of good feeling as well.
Yeah, and exactly. So, for release 2 of the framework, we've taken a lot of that feedback from people such as yourself who've used it, and many of the other guides, and we built that back into it and made those improvements, because there are so many different ways you can use it. Now, we can't cater for everything, but obviously we've certainly worked through that. So Farnaz, getting off the team launch and moving forward, and you were talking about the team launch. So talk to me about where that works and what layer of the organization. How does that differ from the team launch for those who?
Yeah, I try to use some of the languages that people are familiar. So if you are in the project itself, we talk about programs, or you have used for some particular frameworks or different system, or you are familiar with the portfolio or team of teams. And you know that there should be a proper linkage to what happens at the team level. And we always talk about that kind of middle layer is really important. You go to the organization and see leaders are quite clear about what they want. They set their strategies. That's the way we want. These are the goals that we have. And on the other side, you have the squads and team day to day working on building a software, making something good happen, talking to the customer. They are on the flow. And then we have the middle layer in between, which is really, 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 really important, because that's a conduit. That's how it connects these two groups together. Because our leaders, our executives, they don't have time and a space to come and talk to a squad day to day, and vice versa. So how can you ensure that the strategy will kind of convey properly and gets to the squad, and the work that the squads do and challenges that they have will pass properly to the right people to help and support them. And that's the team of team level. That's the middle layer that you design and you discuss about who is part of that layer, what decisions do they make, what role they are playing, what is the purpose of that group, how the information flows. That helps with the connection, the flow of the information, the flow of the decision making, and provide a level of transparency. And more importantly, they are enablers in the organization. So that team of team canvas helps and provide that kind of a structure, again, from different level, what culture and vibe you want to create, how the system works, how the information flows, how you measure your progress of your work at that level, and then how you can be sure that you are aligned with other portfolio, other programs, because it's a kind of hierarchical, not necessarily hierarchical, but it's very connected. And this team of team provides a space to be connected and be aligned.
It's interesting you use the word group a number of times through that, and the reason I pick up on that is because in the new version of the framework, we've actually changed it from team of team to group launch, and our reasoning around that is for that very reason that you're talking about, because it is a grouping of teams throughout the organisation that you're connecting. So very interesting that you were using that language. Got a question for you. That's come through. Isn't it just adding another level of hierarchy is the question?
No, it's not necessarily hierarchy. I see at a different level of responsibility and accountability. Again, that's my very personal opinion. That's the way I see it. I have seen the organization that the hierarchy is completely different. It might be part of even the different business unit. It's just a matter of that you have people that they are working day to day. They are building a software, they are coding, you have business analysts, different roles in your system of work. And they cannot be active in any decisions that you want to make. They cannot be active in every flow of the work. And that team of team, or that kind of layer, provide the right conduit for you to reflect your system of work to the broader audience. It doesn't mean the higher level. I say to the broader audience. It can go in parallel as well. It can go down to the other streams of work. And that's the enablers and supporters. But you need to design it for them. I think it's a very unfair expectation that you want them to come up with their own way. You go through the team canvases and you design them for them. We have to set up the right container for that good team of teams as well, and they play important roles.
Yeah, same person's question that saying, does that not create overhead as well?
They are enabled. They are not supposed to be an overhead. I give you an example. Sometimes, I don't know, you want to go do a proof of concept. You want to try something new. You need to bring a new vendor in place. You can't expect your team member to do that. You have that enabler supported team in place that help you to kind of expand your area of access, and that's the role of that middle role. You want, and I know that different frameworks, they have different way of responding to that level, but and we have had a lot of conversation that in agile mode, where does the project manager seats, PMO seats, we are not necessarily talking about a specific role. We are talking about the supporters and enablers. They can play different hat and they can help the groups in different with different capacity. But that's the power of the group. They design it for themselves based on their needs.
So I'm gonna step away from that one now, because we for each of these patterns we could talk ad infinitum, right?
Yeah.
So we only have a small amount of time. So I want to pick you up on the third one that you were talking about when you were drawing the line between them, and that's leadership. So this is always a very contentious one, and that's the leadership launch. Talk to me about how that works and how you use that.
The ones that I have used is that usually when you go through, again, because the up model one is my favorite and we use a lot, when you go through this co-design or change, you need to have the leadership support for change to be successful and be embedded properly. And the leadership canvas has been helpful to bring a level of alignment. Usually leadership, when you use that canvas, you have the opportunity to know each leaders and their leadership style. And now I can say 99% of the time that I have run the leadership canvas, people say, oh, I didn't know about that, my colleagues. I didn't know that we are like this. You kind of reveal the leadership style to themselves first, which I usually, regardless of how many years they have been working together, the leadership canvas helps you to kind of letting them know who they are, how they want to achieve their goals, and how different they are from each other, and then set a level of alignment that in order to help our people and in order to help ourselves, we need a level of alignment, and how we can design that alignment to be successful. So that's kind of in a nutshell what happens in the leadership canvas. And again, like other canvases, there is a lot of different components that you can look at and you kind of understand where they are and how they can improve themselves.
Yeah, I think the piece I like in the canvas, and I'm interested if you use that. I concur with how you're using that. The other piece that I particularly like is as leaders, it's very easy to get sucked into the day-to-day working environment. And, we talk about lifting your eyes and lifting it to the horizon of actually, working in the space, steering and enabling, rather than actually being down in the actual doing and making decisions in the doing layer. Have you experienced that? Have you worked with that piece?
Yeah, and for me, sometimes has been completely opposite. You kind of see that these people, some of the leaders, get very busy because of their leadership style. Get very busy with details, and they never create that space to be visionary, think about future, think about the strategy. But when you run these exercises with them, they reveal it to them, and then they themselves notice that, okay, oh, that's where I spend most of my time, but that's what I don't want to do that. I want to do other stuff. How can I create a proper space for myself? How can I enable and empower my people to be more self-sufficient, make the right decision for themselves, and I can have more space to kind of focus on the steering elements. Usually when you run those kind of activities, it brings a level of awareness to the group that, oh, we don't want to be like this, or we want to change it, we want to be different. And I think that usually, as I said, 99% they didn't know about that about themselves. So it provides that level of awareness.
It's an interesting, because we obviously, again, we look at that dynamically adaptive organization thing. We talk about adaptive leadership, right? And when you are approaching this particular thing and you're talking to them about it, and you're saying, well, you need to adapt your leadership styles, that's a hard conversation. A lot of leaders go, well, why should I change my leadership style? And I think this is more of a case of it shines a spotlight on why they need to change. Your thoughts?
Yeah, yes, and that's very true. And I'm not saying that it's always will be an easy conversation, but even having a level of acceptance that we want to be, as a group, as a leadership team, work together and help our group is a very good starting point. And I'm not saying that when you run the canvas with the group, everyone would be nice and happy after that. You reveal the system to yourself. And of course, you need, as a facilitator, as a guide, as someone who is helping that group, you need to set the safe space for that group, regardless of how senior they are, or how close they are. You need to provide a space for them to at least understand each other and listen to each other. And this is a series of activities that needs to happen over the time as well. But the eagerness and curiosity to even start that kind of conversation usually is a good sign that yes, you can help the group.
Good question. Different layers of, or different levels of leaders have different needs. Can you use this as different layers of leadership?
I think we can, but usually what I have used, that's again my personal experience, I have used it as a collective for a group of people. And then I have seen that some of those leaders who care more about their leadership style, they have worked with leadership coaches to work on their individual strengths, and more personally has targeted the areas that they want to improve. But again, like any other canvases that we have, you can, if you are a coach, you can use those areas for helping that individual to improve.
Look, I'd step in and offer some experience on that as well. There, I've used that with differing leadership layers, as you've asked, and I think that the point being with it is if you're working with what I'll call the middle leadership layer, they definitely do have a different focus, and the conversation becomes more about the focus of how they're actually working a lot more in the teaming layers, and they're not having enough time to actually think about what they need to do and how they can enable their people. Whereas when you work with more of an executive layer, it has that, but it's also more about the steering of the organization and the strategic decisions and how you can connect that strategic intent to the delivery. So from my point of view, I've used it in both those facets. And as you said, you can use them as a group as well, but I have used it in the singularity as well. Interesting that you stitch all of those together as a toolkit, Farnaz. I'm interested in asking you, how does that fly? So when you work with a really big organization or a middle-sized organization, what's the difference?
I think the difference for me is definitely the complexity. When you work with a smaller group and with a smaller network, it would be much easier to connect the group together. But you always can break your system to more manageable, handleable sizes. And I think that's, again, the modularity of the RAF helps you to organize for that purpose. And that's what I like, that kind of we have the right practices for every level. So it's just a matter of how you scale it. So at the team level, you have team of team level, and you might be able to do another team of team level for the teams that you have. Again, depends on the complexity of the organization, and more importantly, what problem you are going to solve for them. So you can scale it at different levels. You can scale it in different industries. I have worked with people that they are not working in technology, but they're still benefiting from that. So as a facilitator, you can repurpose it based on the context that you are using it.
So one of the questions is, how do you get continuity if it is able to be modified? So I guess the point being there, if I read into that question, is if it's a large organization, sometimes you do need that level of standardization across that. How do you apply that?
Yeah, it is like a continuous improvement. If an organization has continuous improvement in their blood, you don't need one person or two people to kind of own it and run it or policing it. You usually find people in the teams or in your group that they are championing, launching it. What I have used personally, using those champions as an anchor to kind of starting the process, building a community around that, and people learn about it. And because, I have seen, for example, if there are multiple teams using those patterns to set up and redefine themselves, there is a lot of good learning that can happen. So that you can share thoughts, you can share ideas between, if you are facilitating a session and you're learning about it, it's like a mini RAF community inside an organization that they can share their thoughts and learning. So yeah, it depends. If an organization has learning and continuous improvement in their DNA, you will have the right people to support. Of course, RAF is not going to solve that problem. It doesn't mean you take RAF to an organization and they will learn forever. No, you need your champions to support you, and the culture of continuous learning.
Don't frameworks fix everything?
Yeah.
So interesting. You use the word continuous improvement. I think that was something we were talking about off air. You tend to use this toolkit not only in the frame that we've just been talking about it, but you also use it as continuous improvement. So I wanted to cover that today as well. Talk to me about how you see this as continuous improvement tool, because that for people who are listening, some of the things we get asked quite regularly is, isn't it just a canvas?
Yeah. Again, that's my personal experience. That continuity is that when each time you run those activities and patterns, you learn about them. But the places that I have seen it been successful is that they record those learnings. They create some like an Obeya space for themselves at the squad level or at the team level. So all those different iteration of the squad launches and the knowledge and wisdom that they gain through those activities will be displayed and visualized in one space. So even team can see their own evolution over the time. What are the things that they are learning and moving forward? And I think it's a really good vehicle to show their progress, tell their stories to other people, to other leaders, to their stakeholders. So it's like a real canvas about those squads. That's where we started. That's what we have learned. That's what we see ourselves in future. So it's a very good way of recording their journey. And of course, there are a lot of good tools to do that. I have seen many teams, they use Miro as a space to keep that kind of Obeya structure to show their progress through different angles. But I have seen other tools like even Confluence, and people kind of use it and repurpose those tools for keeping the record of their journey.
That's another one. You talked about Obeya there, and of course we strongly recommend virtual Obeya. Talk to me about that. Have you had much experience with that? Have you seen it being used?
I have seen it at the team level. Some groups that I work with them, they have used it, and mainly to kind of show that their strengths in which area. These are the models that we are very good, and we need our improvement. It kind of create very good conversations. And one of the good things I have seen that they moved away from PowerPoint slides and using the Obeyas for having the right conversation based on the data, based on the insight that comes from their system of work, and it kind of removes a lot of waste in their system as well.
That's fantastic. And if you're not sure what an Obeya is, that's it's basically was originally called a war room. It's a Japanese word for a big room, and you would have seen it once upon a time. Used to have all the cards and things up on the wall, and we used to go and stand in front of them. Of course, those things have changed. So this is a digital representation of that. We have a particular version of that we use in RAF. We have a virtual Obeya design or remote Obeya design studio that we have. So think about those. I think that's fantastic. I've got a great question here. I've been saving this one up because I saw it come through before. So the question is, can anyone use this stuff, or do you have to be a guide? And is it worth being a guide? Thank you for asking that question, because I would have asked Farnaz that anyway.
Yeah. You want to, because it's a great tool. I don't want to say if you are not a guide, you cannot use it, but you want to know what it is meant for and what is the right way of using it. And then you can add your flavor. I think that's a great opportunity to know, okay, for this part, these are the techniques that I can use. This is how I can kind of use it. And of course, you will always have the opportunity to add your flavors. And what you see in those canvases is the collection of a lot of people's experiences and learnings kind of compressed in those canvases. And I think that's a great opportunity to learn. It's like you want to buy a book and learn from other people's experiences. Those canvases, I'm not saying they're like a book, but you can get a lot of value to know what is set for, what is their main purpose, and then you can customize it and adopt it in your way. Short answer, I think it's worth it.
So a lot of people ask us, isn't it just a certification? So I think it's interesting to hear from a guide rather than me, because I can say it a million times. but it's not just a certification, it's a learning experience, and that's why we call it a journey. So your thoughts on that if somebody was to ask you that?
Yeah, and I have had this, interestingly, recently people have asking me that if it's worse on that, and I have had a chat with people and say, I want to give, I want to be honest with you, because even when people go for becoming a guide or certified for something, I'm sure that sometimes they, it's a little bit of stretch for them to spend money on that. But if you see yourself in a position in a career, you're facilitating a lot of sessions, you go to different companies to help them with different problems, and you want to have a good toolkit in place to support you, and you also can have a little bit of knowledge and experience from other organizations, especially if you want to have that kind of diversity in your tools. That's something that RAF can provide you, and with the community in place, you can get a lot of support from the group people that we have in the group. So I like it. I like about RAF.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing to mention is that, it's not a certification where we just send you on your way. It's not a certification at all. When we send you on your way, there's a community wrapped around this. There's people who care about this. And you heard me talk at the top of the cast about, join our community. We have a very large community, and you join that at remoteaf.co. It goes to a Discord community, and it's backed up by lots of different people who are using this in different contexts. And if you ask a question, somebody's going to answer you, or somebody's going to help you, or one of the co-creators who are always on there is going to help you. We're all very approachable in terms of that. Farnaz will reach out to you and help you. She's fantastic in certainly, and all of us have different strengths, right? So I would say, in a particular scene, I'd say, look, I'll get hold of Farnaz and get her to touch base with you as well. So. And then the other thing that you mentioned there is, so if you're actually considering being a guide and you want to talk about it more, I'm not saying go and immediately spend money on that. You can reach out to us through remoteaf.co, and we're happy to have a conversation with you. We're happy to put you in touch with any of the guys so you can have a conversation and just see if it's worthwhile for yourselves as well. So that's sort of how I approach it. It's very close to the end, Farnaz. We've come to the end of the cast, and it's been fantastic having you on. I must say, as one of the co-creators, I've missed talking with yourself. We haven't seen each other for a while, so it's been brilliant to have you on today. For those that are listening, again, if you want to join our community, remoteaf.co. Click on the community button, join us. If you're interested a little bit more in the dynamic adaptive organisation stuff that you heard us talk about today, show notes, click on the link. You can find the white paper on that'll start you on that journey. Or, of course, you can reach out to any of our guides through the site as well. Farnaz, it's been fantastic having you on at Talking Remote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for you and all the RAF community and anyone who was listening.
Brilliant. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you. Bye.